welcome to All Steelers Talk, your home for everything Pittsburgh Steelers, presented by allsteelers.com. What is up, Steelers Nation? Thank you for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. We're your favorite podcast host, Noah Strackbine, joined every Fridays with Derek the Kid, with my boy Derek Bell. Derek, we had to Indy. I had there Monday. You had there Wednesday. See a full week of NFL prospects. You excited?
Dude, pumped. Doesn't even describe it. I love the combine. I know some people get a little frustrated with the testing stuff, but I love it, man. I love getting to see guys compete, and I think that obviously we get to go down there and we're going to get the chance to interview a bunch of players, which is going to be fun. I'm super stoked.
Do you have a test that you view as the most pointless, and do you have a test that you view as the most slept on?
Oh, man. Like, it just depends on position. You know what I'm saying? Like, for me, like, the 40 really doesn't, like, to me, the 40-yard dash for, like, 90% of quarterbacks isn't going to matter. Like, if you run a 4.7 or a 4.9, either way, you're probably not going to be much of a runner. And how often do we ever see quarterbacks run 40-yard dashes? Same with like offensive linemen. I think that stuff's fine. It can be a little bit like overrated though. But I think like something that I feel like is like super important is just like the agility, like explosion test for the edge rushers, like the short shuttle and the broad jump. Like I really enjoy like watching guys do that. That's like super important to like the hit rate of edge rushers. So that's always something I keep a good eye on.
The Pittsburgh Steelers will be looking at a number of positions. Quarterback probably top on that list. But as we've moved on, I mean, me and Donnie talked yesterday for 45 minutes about the possibility of Aaron Rodgers, Jimmy Garoppolo, or Derek Carr ended up in Pittsburgh. Because every other day, now they're saying the end of the month. We have 4 days before Jimmy Garoppolo is in Pittsburgh, ready to be the future of the franchise for one season.
I think what we should do, can we put in like my contract for the podcast that I don't have to talk about quarterbacks before the Steelers season opens? Like, I really do. I'm like a quarterback connoisseur. Like, I'm enrolled in the QB school. I love quarterbacks. I am so tired of talking about quarterbacks, though, for the Steelers. I am.
Exhausting.
I'm exhausted with the different hypotheticals and all this different stuff, man. I'm exhausted from watching tape of these quarterbacks and this quarterback class. I'm just ready to talk about something else, man. So I'm really glad that we're going to get a chance to do that today.
Yes, I am too. I even said at the end of yesterday's episode that I was drained. Like afterwards, my girlfriend was like, "Oh, how was the podcast?" I said, "I don't want to talk about it. I'm done talking about it." Yeah. It was a good time. It was whatever. What we will be talking about, those that we will have our eyes on at the combine, a lot of top prospects that people are focused on. Who do we see as the top fits for the Steelers, and who do we think is going to blow some socks off down there? Some sleepers. You got to love some sleepers, especially when the Steelers' needs or list of needs is so long. But we're going to start with the Steelers big board. So you're going to go into the draft, or you're going to go into the combine, You're going to have a list of positions that you say you need to look at as an organization. If you're the Pittsburgh Steelers, what is that list right now?
I think for the Steelers, man, like obviously quarterbacks at the top of near the top of the list. Offensive line is the number one priority for me. If I was, Kevin Colbert and handling this offseason, you got to get that shirt up regardless of who's behind center. Cornerback, they've got a couple of free agents in Joe Hayden and Ahkello Witherspoon. I expect one of those guys to be back, but you still need to be 3 or 4 deep at corner. Inside linebacker was a disaster last year with Joe Schobert and Devin Bush. We'll see. I think Bush is definitely going to get next year to figure it out. Schobert, I'm not really sure because he's got a big cap hit. I don't think that he's going to be back in Pittsburgh, at least not at the hit that he's at right now. And then wide receiver, like probably doesn't seem like as big of a need, but you really need to be 4 deep in this league at receiver. And right now the Steelers are only 2 deep. They only have Deontay Johnson, Chase Claypool, Juju Smith-Schuster, probably going to walk and play elsewhere next year, I think. Ray McLeod's also a free agent. I think they'll probably look to bring him back, but you definitely have to add another weapon to get at least 3 deep at receiver this year.
I agree. So the only one I had different is wide receiver. Obviously, quarterback, a must for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think me and you are both in agreement right now that on paper, it's the number one need, not necessarily the number one place they should be looking early in the draft. Offensive line, like you said, top priority, should be top priority. It's got to be number 2 there. That could be offensive tackle. That could be center. It could be a guard. Honestly, I don't care. When you have a line this bad, you plug and play talent wherever you could get it. Cornerback, especially in this draft, you have an opportunity to not only add to Cam Sutton and to Kello Witherspoon or Joe Hayden or whoever you bring back, but also add depth around. I mean, for the first time in what would it be, 3 years, where I guess 2 years ago, Steven Nelson, Joe Hayden, Mike Hilton was a good trio. But for that 2-year stunt, outside of that, it's been a long time since Pittsburgh Steelers have had a really solid set of cornerbacks. Inside linebacker, easy one. I do not believe that Joe Schobert comes back to the Pittsburgh Steelers this year. I think that he could get cut sooner rather than later, honestly. And last, I have defensive line, and that could be a defensive end, a defensive tackle, or a nose tackle. Right now, the way I look at the Pittsburgh Steelers defense is Isaiah Loudermilk is promising. Chris Wormley's a good depth piece to have. We have no idea what's going to happen with Stephon Tuitt, and until shown otherwise, I'm going to act like he's not a member of the Pittsburgh Steelers. And we saw the last 2 years what happens when guys like Stephon Tuitt and Tyson Alualu go down with injuries. You have a solid depth piece behind that. Chris Wormley did some of that damage. You need somebody else to kind of fill a role in case both of them go down once again. Wide receiver. We'll start at the bottom here. Wide receiver, inside linebacker. Would you take either of them as high as the second? You've been saying wide receiver in the second round. Would you go inside linebacker in the second round?
I would, yeah. I mean, for one, this inside linebacker class is really unique. Like, it doesn't have probably that premier elite prospect that's guaranteed to go in the top 15, but this linebacker class has depth, man, and there's a lot of different pieces that can fill a lot of different roles for what you want in your defense. A couple guys that I like for the Steelers on day 2 of the draft, if he makes it to 52, a guy like Leo Chenal from Wisconsin is very intriguing to me. The Steelers need to stop the run. That was a huge issue for their defense last year. Chenal is a fantastic run stopper, man. I mean, you talk about block deconstruction, like absolutely annihilating cats at the point of attack. Pullers, linemen getting to the second level, like he just throws them to the side. The game that really sold me on Chenal as like a round 2 inside linebacker was the Wisconsin game against Iowa. Yeah, Iowa. And, man, like Tyler Linderbaum is a great center, man, and he wanted no part of Chenal. I mean, Chenal is everywhere. He dominated the entire game up the middle, so he's a guy that I really like. And I'd also take a receiver at round 2 if, depending on how free agency works out. I mean, like, we can make these lists, but there's a good chance by the second week of free agency, we're looking at a completely different list than we are right now, because the Steelers have some money to spend, but they also have a lot of holes. So we'll have to see we'll have a better idea of what they need in the draft come, early April.
Yeah, I agree. This is NFL Combine list. Great place to start, but it is a starting point. It's like the Senior Bowl. You kind of get you pan it out, you pick your top 5, you move on from there. Cornerback, offensive lineman, quarterback, I think are all viable first-round options, but let's switch it around there. How late would you go if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers and you don't get any of these 3, or say you just get one of the 3 in the first round? How late will you wait to pick an offensive lineman, a cornerback, or a quarterback in this draft?
So for me, I'm not a fan of the quarterback class at all. So I would be okay bypassing the quarterback class if you're able to add a veteran free agent to compete with Mason Rudolph, like a Mitch Trubisky or Marcus Mariota. I know that's not sexy, but I really believe that, even if you don't come away out of the draft with a quarterback, it's not the end of the world as long as you have a vet in the room to push Mason, because they're not going to probably go deep in the playoffs this year. I mean, most places don't have them as a playoff team right now. So if you don't get one, say at 20 or in round 1, you might be better off just waiting until the next year. I will say this about offensive line. Like, while I have criticized like their approach to rebuilding this offensive line the last couple of years, you can find starters, like day 1 starters, in like round 3 and 4. So like, if they don't, say they were able to grab a quarterback in round 1, corner in round 2, if they wait on offensive line, it's not my favorite strategy, but like, if you draft the right players, it could work out, because this is a good offensive line class, in my opinion. The same for corner. Corner's super deep, man. I think there's like day 1 starters all the way up until like the 3rd round of this draft. So I absolutely love the depth at those positions.
Offensive line, 3rd, 4th round. I think that, to me at least, and I think a lot of people would agree with me here, that sparks a little nerve. A little, I don't know about that one. They just did it last season. It did not work at all. What's the difference? You look at this class, Kendrick Green did he just not pan out the way that people expected him to pan out, or were the expectations too high, or is this just a whole new level of offensive linemen in 2022?
I think it's a little bit of both, but part of my thing, so I know a lot of people have talked about moving Kendrick Green to guard, and while I think they might end up doing that, I mean, Colbert seemed like he was open to that, but he also said that they didn't bench him because of poor play. It was due to injury. There's just guards, I think, on day 2, like late on day 3 of the draft, that I think are going to be capable starters. Like, guys that probably are going to be better than Kendrick Green will be at guard, just based off what we saw last season. So, again, it's not my favorite strategy, but I think there's guards in the 2nd round that are going to be able to slide right in your starting lineup. So if they don't take one in round 1, I'm not going to throw a fit, but we'll see what happens. But I love the depth of this class, really.
All right, one more before we go on to the guys that we're looking to watch. The center position, outside of Tyler Linderbaum, nothing?
Nothing. No, I mean, I'm not saying nothing. I'm not saying nothing, but this is not – I mean – center historically, okay, is a very, very thin positional group. It's hard to find these guys. I mean, there are other players like Luke Fortner from Kentucky. I've seen a lot of people mention me in mock drafts with him, like later on in the draft. Alec Lindstrom's a good player from Boston College. He's really good in pass pro of what I've seen. We saw Zion Johnson he got a little bit of work at the Senior Bowl at center, which I think is an excellent decision by him and, all his support system around him, because the more you can do, that's the more valuable you are at the next level. So if you don't want to go Linderbaum, though, I mean, there's a good chance that it's either Kendrick Green or a free agent coming in, because I don't think that there's a lot of options. I will say I will throw out my guy Brock Hoffman a little bit, as far as he didn't get a combine invite, which I thought was ludicrous. But as far as like a priority free agent, late round draft pick, because you will see, over a dozen players probably drafted this year that weren't invited to the combine. I think he's worthy of a draft pick. I think he could make a roster. He has some flexibility. He even played right tackle a little bit last year. He can play all the positions. So a late round guy maybe for the Steelers.
All right, so center, rough. Let's get into some guys that we're looking to watch. Some bigger names maybe for your list, probably names pretty much everywhere. I'm going to go first because my list is significantly shorter and my reasonings are different. So you watch every piece of possible film there is. Like, if there is a player that you've never heard of, chances are Derek Bell has sat down, analyzed that film, posted it on Twitter, and has gotten pretty good responses. Me, on the other hand, I'm a news junkie. I follow what the people want. I listen to everyone complain all the time. I write about it. I figure out the answers for these people. This is my job. This is what I do. So in the last couple of months, a couple of names have come to my attention. One, Jordan Davis out of Georgia. had no idea who he was a couple of weeks ago. Somebody dropped him in the comment here on All Steelers Talk, and I said, I don't even know who that is. That sounds like the most boring name ever. Started looking into him. Started realizing this dude can be a freak. And not only did it move my defensive line position into the top 5 for the Pittsburgh Steelers, him alone, hit right there. I said, you can't draft the 6th position of need in the first round. You could draft the 5th position of need in the first round. If Jordan Davis is there, maybe the Pittsburgh Steelers think about it. All I know is that I've watched enough film on this guy right now to say him testing at the NFL Combine can move him way above where the Pittsburgh Steelers are, or he can make it dangerously TJ Watt sitting at the bottom of the first round level pick for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think that's what we'll find out here at the NFL Combine. 2, Charles Cross. Every time I mention any NFL offensive lineman, because I knew who Charles Cross was coming into this offseason, anytime I mention any other offensive lineman, somebody says Charles Cross, though. So, okay, let's see what Charles Cross has in person, because I truly believe that he's going to slide down to the bottom of the first round, and I truly believe that if he's there, the Pittsburgh Steelers cannot pass up an opportunity to add a guy like this, because even if he plays left and you got to move Dan Moore to right, it's a great starting point to have 2 sound offensive tackles. Malik Willis, that's an easy one. I think there's the possibility that Malik Willis runs himself into the number 3 pick in the draft, and there's the possibility that everybody realized this quarterback class sucks, and why would you try to get a quarterback as early as pick 3 or 9 or whatever? Could start really pushing the grind for Jimmy Garoppolo, who will be in Pittsburgh at the end of the month. Maybe Aaron Rodgers, who could retire, maybe not retire. Who knows? Trevor Penning is a great offensive lineman. Totally agree on this one. My other guy, though, just like you mentioned, Zion Johnson, I want to see how much he works at center, because I don't believe that a guard could change to center after what Kendrick Green did this season. But if he could prove me wrong, I'll feel a lot better about Zion Johnson in that first round than I did. Those are my 4. Got them all highlighted and circled, and I hope I answered everybody's questions there. Now, your list, I texted Derek before the show and said, yo, I'm going to make a graphic of our guys. Who are you looking for? Texted me 15 names. And I said, okay, well, I'm not going to make a graphic anymore. So you could just name them off. So what's your list?
I wanted to give, before I go on my rant of my guys, I wanted to agree with Noah on just some thoughts on the guys that he named. Jordan Davis, mammoth. I mean, he's just absolutely massive. He's going to come in over 6'2", 340 something pounds. He has unique movement skills for a guy that big. Still has work to do as a pass rusher, but he's going to dominate like in the run game from day one. I mean, that's really what you're drafting him as, to be that man in the middle to help your run defense. Malik Willis, I think he's going to run like 4.5, and apparently he has a reported 38.5-inch vertical. Very impressive. He's going to test 90 percentile probably in everything that he does at the combine, aside from height.
Can I ask one thing? Does a vertical mean anything to a quarterback? What is Malik Willis going to possibly do with a 38-inch vertical?
No, it just explains the type of athlete he is, really. But I do think I think people may be a little bit disappointed, not to get off on a tangent, but they might be a little bit disappointed when Willis does run a 4.5. But you have to understand that Willis is 225 pounds. Like he's not a 200-pound quarterback that's like got this rail skin frame. Like he's thick, especially in the lower half. Like he is really, really strong in his base. So like him running 4.5 at 225 is a good thing. I mean, that's 90-something percentile for quarterbacks. Zion Johnson, we talked about him a little bit. I'm intrigued with him. I do see him as a fit for the Steelers if they do elect to take an offensive lineman at that spot. Charles Cross, to me, is the best left tackle in the class. I value him a little bit over Ekwonu and Evan Neal. Ekwonu's the generational type run first offensive lineman. He's just absolutely nasty and super athletic too. Evan Neal's kind of the best of both worlds. Good on the pass, and helps you in the run game. But I think Charles Cross the best pass protector in the class. So that's why he's number 1 for me. He's excellent hand usage. I love his film. I think it's dang near perfect, honestly. Now for my list, that is extremely long. I've got to pull out my notes here.
I'm ready.
Let's see here. Desmond Ritter. I'm not going to talk about quarterbacks. I said I wasn't going to talk about quarterbacks. But Ritter's going to test better than you think. He's probably going to run. I think he's going to run sub 4.6. He's got some impressive shuttle times that I've seen. He's on Feldman's freak list. Really good player. Probably going to go day 2 if I would had to guess. 2 guys that I don't know how they're going to test, but I'm intrigued to see. Sky Moore and George Pickens. Pickens' film from a couple years ago in a run-heavy offense, Pickens looked like a first-round alpha-type receiver. He's going to be a 21-year-old rookie. If he tests well after that leg injury that he suffered a year ago, he was kind of working himself back last year, didn't play a ton. He's going to be a 21-year-old rookie, and I think if he tests well, like runs mid 4.5s, low 4.5s, I think he's going to sneak into the first-round conversation again. People have kind of forgotten about him, but Pickens is ready to play right away. Like, this is a good player. A guy that I think, shout out to my guy Lorenz, who put me onto this dude a couple months ago, Sky Moore. Looks like a Steeler, man. Like your typical, I don't think there's been a lot of speculation about his speed. I don't know if he's going to run 4.4s. Some people say he will. I think he's like more of a 4.5s guy, like low 4.5s. Doesn't matter. Nobody covered him all year. If you're a Pittsburgh fan, go watch the Pitt game. He was open damn near every play. He's impossible to press. Really good receiver. But I'm intrigued on what he's going to run the 40 in. 2 corners, Andrew Booth, who's been my cornerback one for a long time. He's going to test like a freak. Everybody, if you follow me on Twitter, has heard me rant about him for, 5 months now, so I won't go too in-depth with him. Kyler Gordon from Washington, I think he's going to start getting first-round love. This is a guy who has a reported 42.5-inch vert and is going to run probably sub 4.4 at 6 foot, 200 pounds. So absolute freak at that position. We already talked about Tyler Linderbaum, Leo Chenal, both players that I'm intrigued by. Chenal is a better athlete than I think people think. Linderbaum, I think, is a generational athlete at the center position. And then just to wrap it up, Travis Jones from UConn. I think you talk about defensive line maybe being a need for the Steelers depending on what happens with Stephon Tuitt. Travis Jones is a athlete at that defensive tackle position. I mean, he was absolutely fun to watch on film. I'm super intrigued by him. I don't know if he makes it to the Steelers at 52 in round 2. It seems like his stock's definitely roaring. And I expect him to test very well too. But that's another player I'm looking forward to watching next week.
Are you not going to talk about Mafi?
Oh, I forgot about that. I was like,
before we started the show, Derek would 10-minute rant about this dude. It totally slipped his mind. All right, go ahead.
And now I'm mad because I brought up earlier how the explosive tests are so important for edge rushers, and then I forget the edge rusher. So I love this edge rusher class. It's fantastic. Probably one of the deepest that I think that I've ever seen. But Boye Mafe from Minnesota, grades on him seem to be all over the place. Some people have him top 50. Some people have him top 150. Dude's an absolute freak. Like, let me run you down some numbers here. A dude weighs 255 pounds. Rumored to have a vertical of 40.5 inches, a broad jump of 10.6. Going to run the 40 at under 4.6, a short shuttle in the 4.3 range. Oh, and he power cleans 400 pounds and squats 653. I don't know if you're so strong that you're having to put the extra 3 pounds just to get to 653. That kind of seems like the ultimate like gym guy move. Like, I'm just strong.
He had he wasn't ready. Like,
you're just showing off.
It there, and then he was just like, all right, I think I can do another one.
Yeah, I think I can do it. But you take a look. I unfortunately only had 2 games worth of film on him. I'm still searching for more just because I really loved what I saw. But this is a guy who's explosive off the edge, man. Like a guy, it's hard to hit on edge rushers outside of the first round because if you're a great athlete and you play edge, and you have good production, even if you don't have good production, you're going to go round 1 because that's how much athletic traits matter at that position. But, man, Boye Mafe, like if you're looking for a guy on day 2 that could possibly hit and become that really, really good pass rusher for you, I mean, he might be the guy.
So, edge rusher, Travis Judge just said probably won't make it to 52. Where does his boy Mafe fall?
I don't know. I mean, like I said, it just seems like it's always interesting to me because I always try to avoid. I follow a lot of draft people, so I do see people's rankings throughout the year, but I try to avoid like watching or listening to a bunch of like big draft, like Daniel Jeremiah and them, and like looking too deeply at their rankings because I don't want their rankings to affect mine or how I view a player I don't want that bias. So, but Daniel Jeremiah and like some of the bigger name guys, I don't know if he's as high as I have him. So I think he could go round 2, but I've seen other people say that he could slide to day 3. It just really depends. But I think a lot of people are going to get to know his name because, people are going to be watching the combine, and once he blows it up, they're going to be like, man, I need to go back and watch this guy. So just
so you know, there are no draft rankings that count except for Derek Bell's. Okay. Here at All Steelers Talk, it's Derek Bell's rankings, and there are none. All right, I got a couple of questions for you on your guys. First off, I agree with a lot of them. George Pickens, I think he's gonna surprise a lot of people for a guy who has already surprised a lot of people throughout his college career. Didn't know he was going to be a 21-year-old rookie, though. That is very intriguing. All right, Andrew Booth.
Chenal, by the way.
Oh, really?
Little nugget. Yeah. Chenal will be 21 when the season opens. He will turn 22 during the season, but
that's still very young.
Pickens doesn't turn 21 until he's drafted. So
that's wild.
He's really young. Yeah.
Very young. That's crazy, actually.
I don't want to get off on too big of a rant because I may write an article on this over the weekend. It's been like on my wish list, but I just haven't made time to do it. Pickens is the guy, in my opinion, who has the most to gain next week out of any player.
Oh, yeah.
For multiple reasons. For one, there are some concerns about maybe like maturity. I've heard some of that stuff. I don't know how valid it is. I don't know him at all. So I think interviews are going to be key for him. Obviously, medicals with the ACL injury, that's going to be big for him. The testing, he's not this crazy elite athlete, and he is a little bit of a contested catch guy, but I think he's more than that, man. I love his release game off the line of scrimmage. I think he's got solid hands. He can get vertical. It's interesting, though, because people will label him solely a contested catch guy, but there were times when I watch him on film, keep in mind he's in a run-based offense, that he would get behind defenders and the ball would be underthrown, so it turns into a contested catch. If you have a defender stacked and the ball's 10 yards underthrown, that is not the receiver's fault for not separating. Yeah. That's a bad throw. And I think there's some confusion with that on him. So that's why I think he has the most to gain next week. That's why I'm super excited. I hope we get to interview him, and I hope we're able to see him test really well because I think he's talented enough to go round 1.
So, Andrew Booth, yesterday, Donnie asked me a good question. Would I rather a top 3 rookie corner or J.C. Jackson? What is your thoughts on a top 3 rookie corner or J.C. Jackson as a free agent?
So I'll give you something. I think, this is just me, my opinion. I think Andrew Booth is going to be a top 5 corner in the league. So I would take Booth because you get him for 5 years on the cheap. And then I think he's that kind of guy going forward. I know Jackson. I love Jackson. He's a fantastic player, excellent ball skills. I'm just telling you, man, I have a ton of respect for like Daniel Jeremiah and some of like the pioneers of the draft business because if they didn't do what they did years ago, I wouldn't be having the platform that I have. But I really disagree with a lot of people on Andrew Booth. I really think that he's a top 5 to top 10 player in this class. I think he's going to be an excellent pro, like superstar type potential, all pro level corner. I really do. I have that belief in him.
What are the odds he slides to 20?
For one, here's what's funny. So I always joke with Steelers fans because I'll post clips and they'll always tell me, it'll be September. They'll say, there's no way he'll be on the board where the Steelers well, you don't even know where the Steelers are going to pick. But you're telling me he's not going to be on the board. And now the same thing's happening. Like I'll post clips of people and they'll be like, there's no way he's there. There's no way he's there. It gets to the point where like the list of players that are not going to be there at pick 20 are like 500 players deep.
Yeah, it's pretty much every player.
Are we picking Donnie and me, Smitty, you? Who are we picking? So, but yeah, I mean, it seems like he's got a chance to be there. You look at the big boards of some of the big draft media guys, like Daniel Jeremiah included, has him like late 20s. I disagree with that, but their rankings, and then if you look at their mock drafts, which is more about what they hear, I mean, you're starting to see Booth kind of in that mid to late first round range. If he's there, the same with Charles Cross. I tweeted this out the other day, but if he's there, those are run to the podium type picks. Like you get up, you already have the picks filled out, you run it up there. You run it, you don't think twice, you don't stop.
What if they're both there?
You just run it up there.
What if they're both there? What if they're both there at 20?
Man, don't make me pick. I can't.
What if they, I mean, you might have to. What if they're both there at 20?
They're both.
The list of 500 players excludes Charles Cross and Andrew Booth. They're both sitting there.
They're both top 10 players for me. I think that the smart bet may be to go left tackle. So Cross, because here's the thing about corner, and this is the one thing I will say about people having doubts about drafting a corner for Pittsburgh in round 1. Corner is a little more volatile of a position from year to year than tackle is. So like if you get a franchise left tackle for like a Teron Armstead or Trent Williams or something like that, not saying Cross is going to be that guy, but there's less volatility there between corners. Like corners can have bad years or like not as good years. You don't really see that much variation between tackle play. So for me, it would probably be safer to pick Cross.
I know that if you looked that in the eyes, you would take Andrew Booth. I know you would. I know if the clock was ticking after 5 minutes of just the worst contemplation of your life, I know for a fact.
Look, that's a great – if the Steelers had that problem, I'm going to be dancing. But I will tell you, if the Steelers pass on one of those two players, I'm going to be running amok on Twitter. You do not – I'm going to set the app ablaze. It's going to bother me so bad. Andrew
Booth, Charles Cross are on the board. Pittsburgh Steelers go Sam Howell, pick number 20.
I will break the app.
All right, let's talk about some sleepers. So heading in, we talked a lot about some second mid-round guys, which I think is where, you know, sleepers kind of end. Like anybody out there predicting a Trey Norwood, you got so lucky. Like you tried so hard and you got so lucky on a pick like that. I think that there's guys, Christian Watson was a guy heading into the Senior Bowl, which you did not mention on your list. Do you think, is he just a guy you just assume now is just like a stud and we don't even have to worry about him anymore?
I'm trying to diversify my opinions a little bit. That's why I didn't talk about Booth extremely long earlier. I just feel like there's certain guys that, like, if you follow me on Twitter and you're watching this, you've already heard my thoughts on like Cross and Booth and like some of these guys just for the last like 4 or 5 months. And Watson, maybe not as much, but I did talk about Watson a good amount a couple of years ago when Lance was coming out.
Derek, we started doing this podcast in December.
Yeah, I think there's too much. I don't want to talk about the same guys over and over, but I do like Christian Watson's got test phenomenal. I mean, 23 miles an hour on the tracker at North Dakota State. I mean, he's gonna fly. We know that he's a legit 6'4". He already measured in at the Senior Bowl. He's going to run 4.4. I think he's going to look – I'm excited to see him in the drills. I think he's going to show out there too. Yeah, he's definitely going to be a guy that's going to test very well. But I think so many people, like just judging off my timeline, so many people have caught up to Christian Watson now, even guys that hadn't really watched him a lot before the Senior Bowl. Mm-hmm. His hype is – I mean, I saw there was somebody with a good amount of followers. I can't remember who it was, so apologies. But they had him as a first-round receiver now. I mean, that's crazy. But whereas, like, I felt like I was going out on a limb putting him at, 7 or 8 or whatever I had him in my receiver rankings.
Yeah. I feel like your ranking 7 or 8 is a good anything. Let's not get crazy.
Yeah, I mean, he's a top. I think he's a top 50-ish player. I think he's going to go round 2. So, but I don't know. Now people are, throwing him in that, first round conversation. I think that's a little bit much, but
yeah, let's keep them realistic here. All right, some sleepers here. I'll go first, just like I did last time. Mine are kind of grouped. I have 5 guys, but 3 of them are the same position, so count that as you will. First, Brian Robinson out of Alabama. The Pittsburgh Steelers, in my opinion, need to add a running back this offseason. Need to. Just absolutely need to. And if they somehow land a 6th round comp pick for Melvin Ingram, which I guess is expected at this point, and they could somehow move that. If they can move that up just like they did for Isaiah Loudermilk, and get a 5th round, I think Brian Robinson's got an opportunity to be there. I think this weekend either puts him way above where the Pittsburgh Steelers possibilities are for a running back or way below that. And I just don't expect him to test extremely well. I think he is exactly what we see on the film. I'm just kind of looking to solidify that here at the combine. That being said, I think when he's got the ball in his hands, a lot of people are going to see like, okay, this guy's shifty. He's good enough. 2, Desmond Ritter, you talked about him. I think he's going to test through the roof. I think it's going to be absolutely ridiculous, but we won't get too deep here on quarterbacks. 3, Damari Mathis out of Pitt, cornerback. Saw him at the Senior Bowl, loved him at the Senior Bowl. I think that he's very slept on because it's such a crowded cornerback class. I think he could play inside and outside, and I think he works drills, at least what I saw at the Senior Bowl. He works drills as well as any cornerback in the draft. I don't know how he's going to test, but I think that once people have an eye on him, once the camera's on those cornerbacks, this dude's going to start gaining a lot of attention. I don't know how high he moves up. I don't know where you have him on your list, but I think he's a dude that's going to surprise a lot of people. And I think he's only going to get better in the NFL. And then linebackers. I have 3 inside linebackers that I think are all middle of the pack here with the possibility of moving up or down. First, Quay Walker's out of Georgia. Not a huge fan of this guy. I think he played pretty terribly when you watch his film. That being said, I think he has all the physical attributes to make himself an NFL inside linebacker. He's got to test really well at the combine. Chad Mumma out of Wyoming. I've talked about him a couple of times. I think he's just right there. If the Steelers are going to have an eye on him, he could be that. He reminds me a lot of like Josie Jewell. Could be like a mid-round pick who just sneaks into a starter position real early in his career. And this next guy is the same way. Darion Beavers out of Cincinnati. He's a guy that a lot of people have turned me on to. I think he fits the mold right there with Mumma as guys that could come in here, start along Devin Bush without super high expectations and make this defense better. So those are I think I had 6 there. I believe there's 6.
Yeah. So, I'll give a couple examples. I don't want to group these 2 guys together for intentional reasons, but it is, I guess, kind of intentional. Sam Williams from Ole Miss and Ed Ingram from LSU. Both of those guys had big off the field concerns, charges that will have to be discussed, in interviews and stuff like that. There's going to be a lot of questions involved in those, but they're both really good players. Ingram's film is super solid as a guard. He can get out in space. He's a guy that just depletes people when he's pulling around the edge. Sam Williams, excellent burst off the edge, man. I mean, this dude can really, really rush the passer. When I watched him and Charles Cross, it was really interesting because he was on Cross's side a lot in the first half, and then I think they just said, why are we doing this? This is pointless. We're banging our head against the wall. Then they moved Williams to the other side, and Williams just started taking over. I mean, they couldn't block him. And they were trying to double him. They were trying to chip him with the tight end, with the running back. Didn't matter. They couldn't block the dude. So, and extremely, you talk about guys that have the potential to hit at edge on day 3. And I think Williams, probably doesn't go, even though he's got the film to go a lot higher than that. I don't know if he goes that much higher than day 3 just because of those off the field questions. At receiver, Wan'Dale Robinson, guy from Kentucky, kind of a gadget guy, but I think at Kentucky they did more with him down the field. He showed that he actually had a legit NFL translation, I think, at the position. The question, it's not a question, but the downside to Robinson, he's only 5'7". So that's definitely something that's gonna hurt. Same with Calvin Austin. Those guys are gonna test really well. They're gonna run really fast, but they're really small, so they're gonna slide down. A guy that I think is gonna be a day 3 player probably just because of how deep the class is. I mean, he could sneak into day 2. I think he should. It's Khalil Shakir from Boise. I love this dude. I got turned on to him back in September, and then I started watching him live. He made a couple circus catches for touchdowns. He's an excellent player. He plays inside and outside. He's 5'11". He's good with the ball. You can scheme him touches. He's a hard dude to tackle, good hands. I love his game. He's just really, really, really solid and can play early on. The cornerback position, I wouldn't call – I think a lot of people have woken up to Kobe Bryant from Cincinnati.
Yeah.
A lot of talk's been about Sauce Gardner, who's a great player in his own right. But, man, Kobe, I think excellent ball skills. I mean, he's a turnover machine. The dude knows how to get the ball out of receivers' hands after the catch. He knows how to play the football in the air. Really big fan of his game. I'll throw a shout out to my guy Jermaine Waller from Tech. Got a chance to interview him a couple weeks ago. A guy that's a legit, 6'1", 6'2". I think he's going to come in at like 6'1", and I was told that he's going to run in the low 4.4s. So you look at a guy with that type of length and run low 4.4s, a guy that you're probably going to get on day 3 of the draft. There's some upside there. He played a little bit of nickel too this year, which I think shows some of that versatility that you're looking for as well. So, I mean, there's a ton of good players, good prospects. I'm trying to think about if I missed anybody that was on my list.
You'll be tweeting people out in 25 minutes. Be like, this guy also was not on the sleeper list.
Max Mitchell.
Max Mitchell. Yeah. True.
He had a good Senior Bowl, or he had a solid Senior Bowl. I wouldn't call it necessarily good, but I do think that he has some tools to be like a developmental tackle at the next level. I think the running back class, you mentioned Brian Robinson. I think we're both in agreement that he's a perfect kind of handcuff to Najee Harris. Maybe not. You're not looking at a thunder and lightning type scenario. They're both kind of similar players, but I do agree that Robinson's a good player. I will also point out Rashad White from Arizona State. That's a guy that I really like. Just a really solid back, can catch the ball out of the backfield, can make people miss. I definitely think he's a 1B type of running back at the next level. So if the Steelers want to grab somebody, maybe early day 3, I think that makes sense.
I think White is going to be way too high by the end of this. I think he's going to test.
He should. I like him a good amount.
Me too.
I've read a couple 3-day mocks, or 3-round mocks, I should say, and I haven't seen his name in there much. This running back class is like, there is no Najee Harris. There is no, Saquon Barkley type, but it's super deep. And it just, all these guys do a lot of different things very well. Like, for instance, for me, I think Breece Hall is my running back 1, and he has been for a little bit now. But, I see people with Breece Hall in the 70s or 80s of their rankings. I mean, opinions are going to differ so much. And I do agree, Jason, I don't see Waller and Lane as, similar players, to be honest. I thought Lane's tape was pretty bad. I didn't think Lane was.
Yeah.
But I did when Lane was getting first round hype, because if you remember, there was a couple of days leading up to the draft where people were saying, who's the one player that could sneak into the first round that you don't expect? It was Justin Lane. That's what scared the hell out of me. Now, I thought where they got him in the 3rd round was fine value. I thought that was fine because you're taking a chance on the traits. You're taking a chance on the length and, the size and stuff like that. I get it. But I think it
was also a terrible draft. The year Justin Lane came in, the drop-off in talent from that 1st round to that 3rd round
it wasn't as deep as a corner class as we've seen the last 2 years, in my opinion.
No, it was. I mean, but even the year before that, it wasn't the year before that. Artie Burns? No, 2 years before that was Artie Burns.
2016. Yeah.
The
Artie thing still makes no sense to me. I hate that.
Who was the cornerback? I was trying to think about this earlier today, and I was driving, so I couldn't Google it. Who was the cornerback that was drafted before Artie Burns? Because I know there was 2 of them that the Steelers should have drafted, didn't, because
Xavier Howard.
That was one.
Went right after him, and then William Jackson went right before him. The pick before.
Yeah, maybe it was William Jackson. Xavier Howard really was drafted after Artie Burns.
Yeah, Jason, Waller does have some good tape, man. If you go back and watch, he matched up with a lot of good receivers in the ACC. I mean, you go back and watch his game. He had a good game against Carolina that I thought was pretty good tape. He had an athletic interception on Sam Howell. He had a pick 6 against Notre Dame too. The thing with Waller, I think he would be higher in this class, but he played with a foot injury. And then, he just wasn't fully healthy for a lot of it. And then he gets to the Shrine Bowl. He had a really good first day of the Shrine Bowl and then pulls his hamstring. But luckily, I think that's minor, and I think we'll get to see him run at the Combine. But it's just like, I think getting him healthy and him being available could lead to some value for teams at the next level for sure.
All right, so before we head out here, I got a couple of just nonsense questions for you. Actually, one goes back to your sleepers because you talked a lot about corners. So Cam Sutton, only guy, starter, proven starter. When you're the Pittsburgh Steelers and you're looking for a cornerback this offseason, are you looking for a proven CB1, or is Cam Sutton the CB1 and you just need a compliment to him? Because I feel like that's a very deep question.
I think the Steelers' philosophy over the years shows that they're okay with not having that elite cover corner. Like, they want to build from the front back. Like, they want to build with their pass rush. They want an elite pass rush and their corners and secondary to play just well enough. So in that regard, like, if they were to bring back Ahkello Witherspoon, I think that they would be okay with feeling like, hey, I don't have to reach on a corner round one no matter what, because we do have Sutton and Witherspoon. We know we need to add to it, but we feel okay about the guys that we've got. But to answer your question, I think I've preached this for months now. I think the value of having that type of elite ceiling type of corner for the Steelers could take this defense like really over the top. I really do believe that. And that's why I would fully consider taking a cornerback at 20 if the right one was available. Again, I think Booth at 20, I think that's a dream come true. And then I mentioned earlier about Kyler Gordon. I think if you're looking for a guy who has the athletic traits and good film, like Gordon has good film. Washington plays a lot of zone, and I know that's kind of one of my concerns a little bit about McDuffie. Like, people have McDuffie in round one. I don't know if he's a round one corner.
Yeah,
but I have more faith in Gordon's ability. When I saw him play man coverage versus McDuffie, I kind of thought Gordon was a better player in man. I thought McDuffie was better in zone. But I like Gordon's ability in man. I think it's translatable. So he's a guy that I don't know if he lasts till 52. If he does, like I said, sub 4.4, it's going to be 6 foot, 200 pounds, 42.5-inch vert. You don't get that very often. And I think he's only going to get pushed down in this draft, probably out of the first round, because of how deep the class is. There's so many good corners in this class.
All right. So heading into Monday, position group you are most excited to see?
For me, I played receiver and corner, so it's always going to be receiver and corner for me. I love the drills and stuff. I mean, I'm so super excited about that. So I'll say receiver and corner.
Position group you think will blow the socks off of people the most?
I'll say edge. I mean, yeah. I mentioned Mafe earlier, but I think Ojabo's going to test crazy. There have been some just freaky suspected numbers from Aiden Hutchinson. I don't really necessarily want to. I don't want to say that I believe them, but let's just say these numbers that have been thrown out for Hutchinson as rumors have been comparable to TJ Watt. And I think Steelers fans, I hope, know this, but like, there's this idea around some people, I think, because TJ Watt's white, that they don't think that he's an elite athlete. TJ was a freak at the Combine. I mean, you look at his like mock draftable. If you guys don't use this website, you have to use it. But TJ, these are the groups that he tested above the 90 percentile. He was above 90% in height, weight, hand size, broad jump, 3-cone, 86th percentile in the 20-yard shuttle, and 94th percentile in the 60-yard shuttle. I mean, this dude tested out of this world. So those numbers are pretty comparable to what I've seen thrown around for Hutchinson. If Hutchinson tests like that, we know Thibodeau's a great athlete too, but I'm excited to see if those numbers are true, just because I've seen a lot of speculation in the past couple of months.
That would be absolutely nuts. Does Hutchinson guarantee himself the number one pick if he tests crazy? I think you have to, right? I can't pass that up.
I think, see, the thing is, to me with Hutch, I don't see that when I usually think about elite first overall pick type of pass rushers, I usually think of like Myles Garrett and those elite athletes. And part of, like, probably in my opinion, the most important part about being an edge rusher is your get off the line of scrimmage. If you can't threaten tackles vertically off the ball, then I don't know if you have that same ceiling. You can still be great, but like it's a lot harder to do. You have to be great at almost everything else. Thibodeau has that elite get off. Hutchinson, I don't see that, but people say that he's going to test like a freak, which I think he's going to test very well. I don't know if he tests like a freak necessarily, but
do you think Thibodeau is the guaranteed? Do you think right now he's the number one pick? I've seen a lot of people drop him. Like
yeah,
6,
I don't
7.
think so. I mean, I saw that. I saw people, question a little bit of the effort, the motor, whereas like that's not a question. That's the one thing that I do think Hutchinson has with like a TJ Watt. Hutchinson has an exceptional motor. Like, dude runs hot at 100 miles an hour all the time.
Yeah.
Same as TJ Watt. Like, we've seen that in Pittsburgh over the years. So, but I think there are some concerns. I think personally people are overthinking Thibodeau. Like, if Thibodeau gets out of the top 3 or 4 of this class really only has probably one blue chip guaranteed superstar, in my opinion. But I think we're overthinking Thibodeau because he has the traits to be like a double-digit sack guy very early in his career.
Who's your number one solidified superstar? This is breaking news.
It's Kyle Hamilton, I think. I think Hamilton's the best player in the draft.
That was a dumb question. I knew that.
I
didn't think about that, but I knew that.
And I know he's not going to go number 1. I mean, shoot, he might not even go until like 8, 9, 10, something like that. I know he's a safety, but I mean, when you're talking about the perfect blend of ceiling and floor, it's Hamilton. Like there is no, in my opinion, I don't see a way that he busts. I don't. He's a guy who's, whatever. He's like 6'3",
6'3", 6'4", maybe.
Yeah, he's like 6'4". The dude runs like a freaking gazelle. He can play, he can play the center field role. He can play in the box. He can cover tight ends. He can cover slots. He's got excellent playmaking ability. That interception that he had, I forget who it was against. Maybe Boston College. I'm gonna hate myself for forgetting what team this was against. The one where he comes from the middle of the field to make the play on the sideline.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, one of the greatest plays I saw last year for anybody, any player. He's a freak, man. He's a guy that transforms your defense. I know that I've seen comps to Derwin James. They're 100% valid. I mean, he's that type of player that whatever your defense needs, he can do it. And that's like when you're looking at a guy to pick in the top 10, if you're going to pick a defensive player, they need to have elite traits, and Hamilton definitely does.
All right. So last one here before we send it out and we send ourselves to Indianapolis, Lucas Oil Stadium, Indianapolis, Indiana. That's just terrible. Terrible. I don't know who did that, but that's terrible. I know I'm putting you on the spot here. No, I wouldn't say that. What is going to be the people's biggest shocker in Indianapolis? See, it sounds like you should be saying Indiana, not Indianapolis is way too drawn out. Like Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Small, large. All right. What is going to be the people's biggest shocker coming out of Indianapolis by next Sunday? I know I'm putting you on the spot, but I feel like we're gonna get a good.
Yeah, that's tough. What's your? Let me hear what your take is.
First. I don't have a take. You think I have a take? I think the take is going to be that people are finally going to realize that the quarterbacks just need to be pushed to the side. Like if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers, by the end of Sunday, that would be my take. That would be my people's surprise. Is that by next Sunday, I would hope everyone in Steelers Nation, me and you included, have just totally pushed the quarterback conversation to the side, said if it's Mason Rudolph, it's still better than this, and we could just move on from it. I think that would be my shock to the people. I don't think that's a good one, though.
So I'll say that here, I'll just give 2 more players that I think are
Yeah, you got 40 of them. You might as well just toss 2 more out there.
I'll give 2 more players that I think are going to test extreme, like way better than maybe to put themselves on the radar for casual fans. I think like draft nits know these guys are super athletic, but I think like just under talked about athletes and prospects. Chris Salave, who's going to be like a edge of first round, early second round. I think there was this controversial opinion that like he maybe wasn't as fast as people said he was. Olave is going to test extremely well. He's going to look really good in the drills. I think he's going to be a guy that's going to help his stock. There's the concerns with the length, but Olave's he's going to look really good at the combine. I 100% believe that. Another guy, which was actually on my list of people that I wanted to see, but I didn't get to him earlier. Talked about him a lot. Daxton Hill from Michigan. The Michigan guys, regardless of who you root for in college football, Michigan and Penn State, who I'm about to talk about next, those guys get their guys ready for the combine. I mean, if you want to bet on all right, which group of players from which school is going to test really well, Penn State and Michigan. Ohio State close behind them. So Daxton Hill, he's like a safety nickel. I mean, whatever. He's another guy. He's a matchup nightmare type of piece that you can put on anybody. You could put him on tight ends, slots. He could play middle of the field. He could play in the box. He can blitz. He's like a souped up version of like whatever you want your nickel corner to be. I absolutely love him. I have a first round grade on him. So he's going to run extremely well. And then I'll go with the Penn State guy, Jahan Dotson. I'll stick with the receiver.
Oh, okay.
Jahan Dotson's going to fly at the combine, I think.
Oh, yeah. How tall is Jahan Dotson's just 6 foot, right?
6 foot. 6 foot, but the difference with Dotson, in my opinion, and this is I've made this I've seen people compare him to a bigger KJ Himmler. I think Dotson's a better player because Dotson plays way bigger than 6 foot. Like he's a legit good contested catch player. You just don't see a lot from guys his frame and his height. So I love his above the rim ability for a guy his size. He's an excellent player.
Love it. All right. Well, next time you lovely people see our lovely faces, we'll be broadcasting live from Indianapolis, Indiana, right in the living room of our 11-bedroom Airbnb. 11 bedrooms. There's 3 people living in it. So if anybody's going to Indianapolis and you need a place to stay, you give me and Derek a shout out on Twitter. Thank you, everybody, for jumping on to a wonderful NFL Combine preview episode of All Steelers Talk. Make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/All Steelers Talk. Like this video. We appreciate you. Use our promo code on manscaped.com for 20% off and free shipping. And we'll see you next week live from Indianapolis, Indiana.